Hi everybody, this is Fox Nomad, and today I want to help you travel smarter by reviewing the ABOX 4K action camera. Now, why am I reviewing this camera? Well, so the last time I did one of these, I reviewed the Lead Edge 4K camera. You can check out that video, it's in the description or up here. And I wasn't really impressed. Now that camera is $40 and this one is $60. So what I wanted to do was take this camera to the best possible place. So put it in the best possible conditions and see the kind of video that it would take under the best possible lighting conditions, the best wildlife, the best nature. So I took it to the Galapagos Islands. What I found there overall was that the camera impressed me, although I don't think the quality is as great as it could be. Let me explain why. So if I compare this back to the Lead Edge, so you look at the Lead Edge, it's really pixelated, it doesn't really have a good color profile, and even under the best lighting, outdoor lighting, sun lighting, it just didn't look really good. But in those same conditions, this ABOX did, I think, pretty well compared to other cameras of this class. So that's cameras that are in this price range, which is about $40 to $60. And the reason that is so incredibly enticing is because the next closest GoPro, you can get a GoPro 5, a GoPro Hero 5, for about $175, $200. So that's a pretty significant jump. So it's not like these are just below, you're not paying just a little bit more to get a GoPro. Unless you find a really good deal on a GoPro or are willing to spend the amount of money on a GoPro, then you're probably looking at some of these budget cameras and you want to find out which is the best one. So here's what the footage of this ABOX looks like, all of the specs, the pros, the cons, and what you can expect to get for your $60. So on paper, the ABOX looks pretty good. It shoots 4K video at 30 frames per second, or 2.7K at 30 frames, or 60 frames per second at 1080p. It's got a 16 megapixel camera and shoots at 170 degrees wide angle, but there's a lot more to a camera than what's on the spec sheet. And if you've seen the unboxing video, I'll link to that in the description below. If you've seen the unboxing video, you see that it does come with a lot of accessories, and there's one accessory to note. That's the underwater case. This camera is not waterproof, so you'll need to use the underwater case every time you take it in the water, but it's going to be a little bit bulkier than you would get, say, with a GoPro. For most people, that's not going to be an issue, but if you really want to minimize the amount of bulk that you carry, then this underwater case is going to add just a little bit to that. The actual camera, though, looks pretty sleek. It doesn't look cheap. It looks pretty well built. There's one thing that I wish they would change, and that's this battery door. It's very difficult to open. You kind of have to stick your fingernail in there and to pop it off, and it doesn't look like that plastic is going to hold up over time. Now the ABOX does come with 2 batteries, so you might be switching batteries quite often, and if you're doing that, I'm not sure how well this door will hold up. Only time will tell. Aside from that, it's got this very intuitive touchscreen. Though the power button on the front, everybody who's used this camera seems to want to prefer, including myself, to use the top button as the power button and the front button to start the video. I don't know why it seems more intuitive to have the power button on top, but it's probably going to confuse you at least more than a few times when you use this camera. Other than that, the settings are pretty easy to figure out through the touchscreen. The remote control is very easy to pair with the camera. And once you get your video settings, the first thing you're probably going to want to do is turn off this timestamp, which is on by default. Again, something I wish that they would change. The timestamp really is annoying, so you don't want to have to fiddle around with the settings, but just keep that in mind if you get this camera. As for the footage I think looks fairly decent considering how bright it is and shooting underwater. I mean, these are probably the most ideal conditions you're gonna get. You've got a lot of color saturation from the water and from the background, from the sky, and it's as bright as it's gonna get. This is full sunlight. The water here is very clear, so in the parts that I'm showing you now, the water is very clear. So these underwater shots are very well lit. And these shots up on the surface are also very well lit. Now you notice the pixelation more in the shots that are above the water. You see here as I'm kayaking with my friend, you can see how pixelated everything seems to look. Under the water though, it seems to smooth out quite nicely. Oh yeah, and this shark just happened to swim by my hand as we stuck the camera in the water. Anyway, you can see the pixelation a lot more when this thing is above the surface. It's a little bit strange to say it, but I think this camera works better under the water. It looks better, and I think the water does hide a lot of that pixelation because you have less color saturation, you've got less details from the water, so I think that helps sort of obscure the pixelation. Above the surface, it doesn't look really great. It's sort of like the lead edge. It gets better colors than the lead edge for sure. I feel like the lead edge is very heavily blue oriented, but here with the ABOX you have a differentiation of colors which is nice. And as for the audio, well, it's not really the reason you would get an action camera, but if you really want good audio quality, then you're not going to find it in the ABOX. It's passable, but it's not great. And as for the photos, well, they're not very good. So using the ABOX is pretty straightforward. It's got a power button on the front used to turn it on. The LCD right above that shows you the time, how much you've been recording. The button on the top is the actual record button, and the two buttons on the side can help you get through the touchscreen settings if you're using the underwater case. Otherwise, you've got the touchscreen as an option to use to flip through different settings, different resolutions, turn the timestamp on and off, and format the micro SD card if you need to. And that's one more thing to note, this ABOX does not come with a micro SD card, so you're going to have to budget about half the price of this camera for a micro SD card if you don't already have one. So there you have it, that's the ABOX 4K camera. So ultimately, should you get this camera comes down to, in my mind, two things. The first one is your budget. If you don't want to spend more than $100, then you're going to be looking at this price range, which is about $50 to $60 for an action camera. And the second thing is, how often do you use your action camera? Now, personally, when I travel, I don't do a lot of water sports. I'm not in the water a lot. I'm not swimming or snorkeling very often. I haven't used a lot of action camera footage when skiing or anything like that, so I don't use these action cameras very often. If I'm gonna use a camera, I'm gonna use the big one I'm recording on now, which is the Panasonic G85. But for action stuff, something that I don't use very often, maybe a couple times a year at most. So if that sounds like you don't take too many trips, maybe you're going to take just one snorkeling trip a year, and you really want an action camera or something like that, then you're probably better off just spending the $60 to get one of these. So if you're somebody who does a lot of sports, you're going to tie this up to your bike, you're going to go skiing, you're going to go snorkeling, or especially scuba diving, then I think it's better to spend the money to get a GoPro. Anything on the GoPro 5 up is going to give you really good quality. But for somebody who's taking just a trip every once in a while, and you don't want to spend a lot of money on an action camera you're not going to use very much, then the ABOX certainly has a lot of features which make it very attractive. It's got the touch screen, quality of the video is decent under good lighting. It's got the remote control, which is very useful. So for $60, what comes out of the box and the camera itself, I think it's not a bad deal. Definitely the best one I've tried so far. Let me know what you think in the comments below, if you would get this action camera, if you think the quality is good enough. If you were going to the Galapagos Islands, would you take this action camera or would you get a GoPro? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll have a full Galapagos video for you coming up in the next couple days. Be sure to subscribe to make sure you don't miss that. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And again, if you really like this video, please subscribe to the channel. I'll have new videos for you every week. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.